Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Author Spotlight. This is Taj Deshawn. If you are listening on Thrive After Sports, thank you for tuning in there. I'm joined today by a very special guest who I've had the pleasure of connecting with, thanks to the power of Clubhouse. This is Mr. Jesse Bradley. What's going on, Jesse?
Taj, it's so good to be with you today. And I know we share a lot of the same passions, books, sports, and we got the same look as well. So I'm so glad to connect with you, and congratulations on your move to Texas. I lived there for a while, and that's a big step, but I'm cheering you on.
Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate that. As Jesse mentioned, we do have the same look. If you're watching this on video, as you can see, Jesse and I have the same barber. We go to the same barbershop.
It's low maintenance living. You can't beat that.
That's right. No hair products, nothing. You just wake up and go. It's a beautiful thing.
No bad hair days.
That's right. That's right. So, Jesse, I just want to get into your story right away, man. I'm very grateful that we connected. Once again, thanks to the power of Clubhouse. By the way, if you're not on Clubhouse, we'll have all Jesse's information, all his social media and all that linked in the show notes. But you're definitely going to want to connect with this man, jump into some of the rooms that he's speaking in. Please reach out to this man, DM him. If you're not on Clubhouse yet, get your invitation from Jesse, get your invitation from me. But we're here to talk about Jesse's story today. Can you just please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and some of the things you're up to today, Jesse.
Thanks, Taj. You know, soccer was my sport. In high school, I had dreams of professional basketball, but you either have to be really tall or really quick. And so instead, my talent led me to be a goalkeeper. And I played in college. I played at Dartmouth College and then played overseas as well. And it was at a time where, I played for a team in Minnesota before the MLS. And then I also played in Scotland and Africa, Zimbabwe. And I think we both, share that drive. You got a shirt on right now about hard work. And when it comes to sports, especially, and as you step up, the next level, your passion levels continue to grow. And it's really a gift to be able to play. Sadly, my career ended tragically because I took it was a medication prescribed to prevent malaria, built up toxic levels in my system. And so in my 20s, I was really, at a loss really for my identity without soccer, without that career, without achievement, without goals. Like, who am I? I was fighting for my life for a year. It took 10 years to recover. And that's why I love what you do with, your book, Thrive After Sports, helping athletes dominate the game of life. No one really helps you as far as in the classroom, coaching you for some of the deeper lessons that you learn as you transition out of sports and some of the gaps there. So I'd be happy to dive into that today. But currently I live in Seattle. I'm married. We have 4 children, 3 boys and a girl. So, she's tough to be hanging in there with the boys. And one child we adopted, and I'm an adoption advocate. I just think there's a lot of kids out there that need a forever family. And so we are in Seattle, enjoying it here. Not as much sunshine as you have, but we're not envious. We like it up here, Pacific Northwest.
Man, that's a beautiful thing, Jesse. I got to get up there to visit you sometimes, man. That's definitely on my list to come see Seattle or come see the area, come see Pacific Northwest for sure. I want to touch on something you said because, first of all, thank you for the shameless plug of my book. We're here to talk about you, but you're talking about my book. I definitely appreciate that.
I've got it right here in my hands. It's too good not to mention.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I wanted to talk about what that transition period was like for you, because as you said, you were traveling around the world, playing for different teams at the height of your career. And then that's something you don't hear. We hear about injuries. We hear about being cut from the team, but a malaria medication, especially something that, that's completely out of left field. What was the process of, I guess, adapting to no longer being able to play? And then I have a 2-part question. The second part is 10 years of recovery. Can you go into a little bit of what the road to recovery was like?
That is a long time. Just hearing that, it's a battle. And maybe a lot of people can relate that they've been battling through something long-term as well. And for me, the symptoms came on quickly. I've been taking the prescribed medication for months, but I started to notice, like, all at once, I had migraine headaches, and I never have headaches. I couldn't even handle light or noise. And then I had sweats and chills, double vision. I noticed my heart started to race and I couldn't slow it down. And it would be while I was sitting still, 160 beats a minute. That's called tachycardia, racing heartbeat. And then the cardiologist found atrial flutter, another abnormality, and skipping beats and heart murmur. And my pain in my left side of my chest was during the day and at night, and my heart was beating so hard. So part of the medication really blocks the inhibitors in your heart, and then there's nothing to regulate the heartbeat. And that was terrifying to have to go through all those episodes and the doctors just not knowing if I was going to make it. In addition to that, the drug also had emotional implications, meaning like panic attacks. I was pretty even keel before the drug, but this would take me places like a bad drug overdose, of depression, anxiety, panic attacks, even suicidal thoughts were flooding into my mind at different points. And I was like, where are those coming from? And trying to sort through that, because the battle's often in between our ears, those first thoughts that come in. And what are we going to do with those? Are we going to entertain them, harbor them, embrace them, reject them? What are we going to bring? What truth are we going to bring to those, that are coming in? So it was something I wasn't really prepared for. Crazy dreams. I mean, the list goes on, but I had to come back from Africa. It was humble pie, move into my parents' basement. I never thought I'd be back there. And we had to pay out of pocket to see a doctor at Stanford to try to get more answers. They took my blood, sent it to Center of Disease Control, and confirmed toxic levels there. And the recovery started. I would say, one of the things for me was to be thankful. I started to write down 10 things I'm thankful for each day, because if you're in a time of loss, it's easy to focus on what you don't have anymore. And I needed to keep that gratitude. So that was one. I realized if I'm going to be in my right mind or get my health and strength back, that'll be a gift. There's nothing I could do to force it. Really, Taj, for me, it was a different way to cope with life, because so much of my growing up, it was like, be tough, persevere. If life gets difficult, or if there's injustice or something goes on, you just do better. My approach was do better at grades, do better at school, do better in sports, just apply myself, learn, do better. And that was kind of my answer. And this was not something I could just push my way through. So instead, I don't like grieving, but I had to learn how to open up, how to grieve. For me, I was really new in the faith. I didn't grow up with any faith, religion, Bible, church, Jesus. That happened in college. I took a class. I was just taking a class, looking for God. And the Bible was assigned with a lot of other different books. I'd never read it before. And I was like, who is this Jesus? And he's so unique. It was so intriguing that I took a year to ask a lot of questions. And then my sophomore year, it was like, okay, I'm going to follow him. So I know this isn't a faith show, and there's a lot of different people represented in terms of listeners. My family is like Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors. I mean, we have Jewish, rabbi, atheist, agnostic, Catholic. We got a little of everything, and we love each other. We have a great time together. So we just kind of share freely about our lives. So that's kind of, a summary of my faith story. But really, I had to learn how to pray, and I didn't really know how to kind of give burdens in prayer, or to kind of take that weight off of me. And so there's all these new things going on, and I charted physically what I could do from week to week, month to month, because I needed some kind of progress. When you're in a long-term recovery, it feels like you're not getting anywhere. And I need to be able to look back and say, 4 months ago, I could only walk 10 minutes. Now I can walk 25. It's just that very gradual improvement, but I needed to chart that progress. So I felt, okay, I am moving forward. I'm not stuck, I'm taking steps, and really to push myself. But it was scary even to take walks. I would have a heart monitor on. So I was watching, my heartbeat, just taking walks to make sure that, it doesn't get out of control. Even driving was too much stimulation for me. And I mean, I graduated, from a good school, Ivy League, and I'm trying to learn how to drive again, so it was just humble pie. And there was so much, my body just couldn't handle stimulation. So if a car started to come close, like my system just couldn't handle it. So I was trying to figure out, what are my limits now? When you play sports, really your body's your livelihood. When your body's not working, that could be the end of your career. And then for me, it felt like a loss of control, like on the brink. Would I lose my mind? Would I physically survive? And, my parents would listen like a baby monitor, just listen to me at night to make sure there wasn't an emergency downstairs. It was that kind of trauma. And the 10 years were gradual. I was able to do more, but again, I didn't know my own limits. So I remember overexerting one summer, and I got strep throat 3 times because my body just couldn't take much activity, and then I went off to grad school. That was easier on my body, but the guys there nicknamed me Limp Biscuit, not a flattering nickname, but it's like, I just didn't have that ability and drive. Like, I was just trying to make it day by day. So there's a couple of glimpses, longer answer, but it's one of those where you would never want someone to have to go through that. And yet I believe some of the best things come out of the worst situations. And I believe that that's when we oftentimes get real, go deep. The most important things about life are learned there. And for me, one major thing was a shift in my identity, because my identity in the past was my athletic career, my abilities, my achievements, things I do, performance, even grades. And all of a sudden, those were all gone. So it wasn't kind of gradual. It was like, they're not in my life. And I really wrestled with, who am I? And I realized my deepest identity can't be attached to something that can be gone tomorrow. Because if it's gone tomorrow, well, then, who am I? It's got to go beyond that. And that's where, for me, like I shared, faith is a big part of my life. So I thought, my anchor is going to be in God's love and in his presence, because I feel like he'll never leave me. He'll always love me. And once I'm secure there, it's like, okay, that's going to affect all my other relationships, because I'm coming to a place of security now. And I know who I am, versus having to try to earn it or perform. And it is just hard. I miss the locker room. I miss the fans cheering. I miss the training. I miss the camaraderie. I miss it. It's one thing when you retire on your own terms. It's another when the end, life's going one way, and it's just not going that way anymore. And you can't make it happen. And so ever since I was 3, I grew up in the University of Minnesota campus and wanted to play pro sports. So ever since I was 3, like, that's the dream. And when you're living the dream and then the dream's gone, it's like starting over. It really is like starting over in life. So I'm grateful for it now. Brutal during those years. Yeah.
Jesse, I can already tell that we're going to have to do multiple episodes with you, because there's so much there to unpack. And and this is why I wanted to have you on the show, right? For multiple reasons. Of course, we're Author Spotlight. We're going to talk about your journey as an author and why you chose to write the book. And for those listening on Thrive After Sports, this is extremely powerful. I mean, a lot of us only have to deal with, like I said, an injury, or, for me, I was just upset about having to pack up my locker for the last time and figure out, what I was going to do afterwards. But for you to have gone through this and to be sitting here today with a smile on your face as you're telling this story, talking about some of the things you did to overcome it, it's very inspiring. And then it also kind of forces me to be like, man, I really did not have it that bad. And I think a lot of people are going to be able to take that away from your story. Mm-hmm. So I got a page full of notes over here. So let me just try to, pick one of these to go with. Like I said, we're going to need a few episodes. But the fact that was it kind of instinctive? Like, where were you getting these methods to be able to cope and get through? Because you talked about practicing gratitude, focusing on what you do have versus what you don't have. You talked about tracking your progress, which is huge. All things that I recommend, that I know you recommend. And that's advice that you give to others. But was this something instinctive, or did you learn how to do this? Where did all this come from?
Right on. The new stuff is sometimes the most difficult, and it takes some courage. I had to let people in, and that's not easy, because when things are going well, you can let people in and they enjoy, the good times. But when you're at your lowest, letting people in, you don't feel like letting people in, but you need people. We need each other so much. And so that didn't come natural. So a lot of these they were kind of counterintuitive or didn't come natural. I wasn't used to doing these things. I mean, I was a psychology major, but it's one thing to kind of, study some sports psychology or study coping mechanisms, but then really our lives, you can study stuff, but what are you going to do when it actually happens? And for me, some of it was a little like throwing spaghetti on the wall. What actually works? When those panic attacks were kicking in from the drug, it's like, okay, I need to breathe slow. I just need to breathe slow and stay as relaxed as I can and tell myself I'm going to make it through it, because I've made it through every single one, and send up a prayer during those, because they really were out of my control, and I couldn't control when they started, when they ended, and you just have to endure them. So there was a range of stuff for me. I think serving was big. Sometimes when you're really suffering, it's easy to turn so inward. and you can have a pity party. You can get caught up in yourself, in your suffering. And I think for me, even though I could only do it, just a couple hours, tutoring someone in the neighborhood, that's a sixth grader, just helping them with homework. Or there was a middle school group, and I just started serving there, at a church, like 1 hour, couldn't handle a lot, but what I could do, it was so meaningful. And I think part of that pathway out of the pit, the valley, is to serve other people, and don't be consumed with yourself. And so, I started memorizing the Bible. That was another new habit. I'd never done that before. I got a highlighter, bought a Bible, and just started, because my mind needed to stay out of the ditch, and I needed to focus on what was true or good or encouraging, not the junk. I had to get rid of the stinking thinking and replace it with some other stuff. A lot of these were new habits for me, and I believe habits are powerful. Habits are transformative. Habits are life-giving. And if we start putting the right habits in, just like for sports, for you in football, when you work on your tackling, and you work on your footwork, and you work on your hands, and then you lift the weights, and you work on your sprinting, like all that is huge in terms of how you're going to play and what's going on in the field. And so I think for an athlete, we're already kind of wired towards some disciplines, and it was like, what are those habits or disciplines that are going to help me in life? And let's start getting those in there. And even just a menu of things I enjoy, a menu of things I can still do. Because when you feel helpless and you feel like so much is taken from you and you didn't have a say in it, and a lot of people can relate to that, injustice attacked, what was supposed to protect me was actually killing me. And sometimes in life, an authority figure, or sometimes a parent, sadly, or a boss, someone who's supposed to kind of have your back, they're actually the ones that are undermining you. And that theme, it's like, well, sometimes you can feel helpless and I've got no options, but that's actually when you have to rise up, when you have to let people in, when you have to serve. And so it is counterintuitive. And sometimes I just had to reach for strength beyond myself. And I realized that too. But I also know I was responsible to really be diligent in some new areas. Yeah.
Wow, so many gems there, Jesse. I love that you touched on serving others, being focused on serving others as a way to stop going inward and stop looking at yourself, and being able to project out, because that is one of the major lessons that I learned that completely turned my life around. And I encourage people to do the same thing constantly, because like you said, when you're able to do that, it's almost impossible to focus on everything that's going wrong in your life, or things you may be struggling with or dealing with, when you're like, how can I help these people? How can I help that person? And it almost gives you a sense of joy seeing their lives improve. So That's a beautiful thing. I love that you shared that. And I'm thinking, there's no way I could ever even pretend to understand what you went through for those 10 years. But as I was listening to your story and putting myself in your shoes, I'm curious to know, because I'm like, if I was going through what Jesse was going through, I wouldn't have been even able to process no longer being an athlete, because I would have been so focused on surviving, or like you said, just trying to drive again and function.
Yeah.
So were you kind of like dealing with, obviously you're dealing with it, but did one overpower the other? Like your basic survival, was that kind of like the forefront of your mind, and then you had to like circle back to address the athletic identity part? Or what was that process like, and how did it unfold?
Yeah, it's like when you have an elephant, or they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Where to even start? And there were
Right.
so many levels to that. I was still keeping all my goalie stuff and soccer balls, for years, because I thought, well, maybe I'll get healthy enough. Maybe I'll be able to come back. So it wasn't a clear closure. It wasn't like, okay, I know my career's over. It's like, okay, let me just wait another year. Let me wait another year. Let me wait another year. So it was a little bit of a carrot out there, thinking, okay, am I ever going to get back to that? And yet, I think in the moment, there was so much going on that I couldn't even process it and make sense of it all. I'm glad I had friends that are honest. I think that's such a gift when you have people in your life that'll be honest with you. And, I had someone who said, Jesse, it feels like you're in some denial, like you're just trying to be stoic, and I needed to hear that, because I didn't know how to manage the pain and the loss and the questions, the uncertainty. And when doctors have all done what they can do and they say, we can't do any more, you know, you just can't, that medical help is just not, it's just not there. It's not their fault. It's just not there. They've done all they can. They just say, I just have to wait it. And there's no answers as far as how long it's going to last or if I'll get better. And so I was out on a limb. And I think in that spot, that's when you grow the most. That's when you learn the most. I think it's so good if you can be teachable. What can you soak up from other people? And Taj, I see how you serve. You highlighted serving, like on the podcast, you're doing this. When you serve people, I believe like you build deep relationships. I believe that sometimes when you serve other people, you actually end up in the place where you were meant to go or wanting to go. And you're coming alongside. I mean, you're very relational. You have an ability to build up, to communicate. So I just see you serving and living that out. And I'm excited. Like, I know your career ending was difficult, hence the book right here, but I'm excited where you're going and what's before you. And I think life comes alive when you enter into other people's stories, and then you get a flavor for who they are. And then if you can encourage them or kind of see them spreading their wings more. And I mean, it's the we more than the me, and I think that mindset, it's so easy in our culture to be self-consumed and just to be, me first. And that just doesn't work in marriage, I believe. Everyone, well, I'll say to myself, when you're single, you don't think you're that selfish. And then you get married and you realize, oh, I got a lot of preferences. I got a lot of opinions about how things should be done. Like I wasn't even thinking how that could affect the other person. I didn't realize how they could be loved and what they really receive love and love languages. And so there's just, I think going back to your question, that serving in those shifts, I think part of it for me was a lot of growth. And part of that growth was serving people. It was becoming more aware of who I am and making some big shifts in my life, but at the same time, not doing it in isolation or on an island. And I think that because I'm thankful for a guy named Jeff. I'll just never forget Jeff. I mean, those first 2 years, no one came alongside of me like Jeff, and when you're at that low place, and someone enters in, you never forget that person. Like you never forget the person who shows up at the deathbed of a loved one and is there for you, or you just never forget. I'll never forget Jeff. And so for what Jeff did for me, and he saw potential in me and he started to build it up, call it out, pour into me, then I get to do that to other people. And then that's when life is rich. So yeah, I'd just say continue to both receive and give that kind of love.
Wow, man. And did you meet Jeff during that 10 years or was this like after the 10-year battle that you had?
I had met Jeff previously, but we weren't close. I mean, we knew of each other, but then when I moved into my parents' place, my parents moved to California while I was in college. So I really didn't have a lot of contacts there. And when I was sick, after my career ended and moved back to California, I didn't know a lot of people. And Jeff was one of the people I met there. And we connected, and then the friendship just took off. So yeah, it would have been easy for me to, when my parents moved, to not meet anybody, again, stay in that isolation. And instead, I just got out of the zone a little bit, met a couple people, even though I thought, well, I'm going to be here for a few weeks. But that started the friendship with Jeff. And then when I came back years later, it's like, okay, now the friendship really grew. And I just want to encourage anyone that's really hurting to not put up too many walls and not isolate yourself too much. And I know during COVID, it's easy to isolate, the pandemic. It's just easy if you've been hurt, if someone's disappointed you, or if you're going through something that feels bigger than you. It's so easy to retreat, to harden your heart, to not trust, and to be in isolation. And I believe that healing is very limited in isolation. In fact, the greatest healing comes through positive relationships. So be discerning, choose those mentors, choose those friends, choose those business partners wisely, because those are going to be the most important decisions you're going to make. But once those people come into your life, don't let past hurt put limits on where those friendships can go, and take some risk. Relationships are always a risk. Take some risk, let people in, let people speak into your life, be honest, and then find some people who you can also mentor, because that's when, again, you're going to be most fulfilled, is when you're both receiving mentorship, giving it, and there's a lot of risks taken in those.
Man, Jesse, there's a lot of strong advice in there, man. Great words of encouragement. Thank you for sharing that. And the thing I'm really loving about this conversation we're having so far is that, of course, you and I are both, athletes, and we're on here talking to the athlete population. But this message, all these things that you're sharing, they're universal. And that's what I'm excited about, is that when people listen back to this or when they watch this, everyone's going to get something out of this, man, because you're just sharing so much. And I really want to get to, because I've been itching to ask you this. When I was done playing football, I was 22, right? 23, coming out of college. These are most of the athletes that I'm having conversations with. Early 20s, trying to figure out what's next, essentially starting from scratch, trying to create a new life. You went through a 10-year journey after your professional career. So by the time you were, I guess, almost back to being healthy again, what age were you at that time?
Yeah. So yeah, mid-20s there as well. So
Okay.
yeah. And all those questions were so real. I was right there. And like you say, you're working with people, they're there all the time. Making a career change is huge. And when you do it, some of the things that help me, what are your gifts? What are your passions? What do you wake up thinking about? Another one is, who do you want to help? What needs do you see that you want to be a part of the solution? Then another question is, if money was no issue, what would you do? If money was not a factor, what would you do? How do you spend your time? And those are some questions that helped me. When I started, it was just serving. You can shadow someone, you can volunteer. It could be a part-time position. Just start heading. You don't have to know the full destination, but just start heading in that direction. It's hard to steer a parked car, so start going down that road, find some mentors, find some people that are doing what you think you want to do, and then just start using your gifts and talents in that direction. And they're going to speak into it. They're going to confirm things. They're going to build you up. They're going to drop some wisdom. And it's going to take time. When you change careers, when you're an athlete, you've got the whole stadium cheering for you. But then when you start this new career, you might be at the bottom of the food chain. So you might be, the person that reports to everyone, that's paid the least, that, not unappreciated. And it's okay. That's part of that learning process. And I just want to say, there isn't anything exactly like being a goalkeeper. So there isn't. But what I'm able to do, there's some parallels, and then also what I found for me post-sports career that's been so rewarding is that ultimately when I'm playing sports, I love the relationships. We still keep in touch all these years later. We're still great friends. So the relationships you realize are more important than the records or the championships. Even though we have those, it's the relationships that are the most important. Outside of sports, what I found is I'm able to even have a deeper impact on some lives. Like when we serve our community and we hand out food and we're building relationships, or, when somebody feels like God doesn't love them and I'm able to reassure that God does love them, those kind of life changes and life impact. And it's just so deep. And so I miss the physicality. I miss that part of sports, but I want to encourage everyone that there is hope. There are incredible options, and your impact after sports is probably far beyond what you can initially see. And so, yeah, just start down that road, and it's going to be better than what it feels like at first.
Right, man. It's hard to steer a parked car. That might be the quote of the day right there, Jesse. That's a good one right there. I'm gonna remember that one. I gotta steal that one from you. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And speaking of you being a man of service, I think we said I think you told me it was about 8 years ago, you decided to write your first book. Notice I said first book, folks, for anyone listening to this, stay tuned with Jesse. For your first book, Rooted in Grace. I'd love for the listeners if you could just share how that came about, what the book is about, all of that good stuff.
Right on. I don't spend a lot of time in the garden. My wife spends a lot more. I'm not really, agricultural, but if you can think of the metaphor of a tree, and you think of the tree that has roots and the tree that has fruit. And when we lived in California, we had fruit trees. I mean, we didn't have like much of a backyard, but the place we moved into had fruit trees, and we would harvest it, enjoy it. But I believe that there's a connection between the root and the fruit, and the root is really a choice, what you're rooted in. And if the roots aren't strong, if the roots aren't healthy, the fruit's not going to be great. And we have a lot of choices. You can be rooted in pride. You can be rooted in fear. You can be rooted in bitterness. I mean, there's a lot of things down there that you can find that aren't going to produce the fruit in your life that you need. And grace was something for me that changed my life, because grace is an undeserved gift. You don't earn grace. I mean, the most popular song spiritually is Amazing Grace. There's a reason why it's so popular. You know, grace is that you're known and loved before you respond. Grace is a gift. You think at Christmas time, you didn't earn those presents. Someone loves you and they gave you those gifts. You just received those gifts. And with God, I had, my preconceived notion was that you have to be good enough, earn it, get as close to 100 as you can, try to do the rules, the rituals, whatever religion is. And then grace just changed everything, because it's like, no, there's no striving, like you're loved. And that was a paradigm shift for me. So grace, I believe, is really when you receive it, when you live it, when you have it, changes all your relationships. So one example for me was my parents got divorced when I was 7. And that's another really difficult time in life as a kid to watch that happen. And then just the family's never going to be the same. Dad moved out of state. My dad wasn't really around through high school. And I was carrying so much bitterness and anger towards my dad. And I tried different things. I went to a counselor. Nothing changed. I told my dad I was upset. Nothing really changed. And I was carrying that. And it wasn't until, for me with faith, I knew I was forgiven and I'd received grace from heaven. And then once I knew that, now I forgave my dad. And forgiveness is a choice. I mean, the healing process takes a long time. It's not overnight. But forgiveness is when you say, I'm going to let go of revenge, bitterness, slander. I'm going to forgive everyone fully. And when you make that decision, you're actually set free. Because when you don't forgive someone, it's like keeping yourself in a jail, and it's bottled up and you're suffering. They don't even know it, but it's eating you up inside. And so for the first time, I was able to forgive my dad. Our journey of healing started. Then we started spending Thanksgiving together. My dad came to my wedding. I mean, it was a total turnaround. We're really, really close now. And it was grace that changed it. And so when you have grace in your own heart, in your own life, your own mind, and you're full of that, it changes the way you respond to other people. And I think we need in our culture right now, I mean, we just have so much that we need to overcome. Like it saddens me when I look at the need for racial reconciliation in our country. Like, okay, we've come a ways, the last 40 years, but we have so far to go. And that's not going to change through a politician or a law, although, those things can be supportive. But it's going to change from the human heart, and it's going to change when what we're rooted in is different. And so when there's love, when there's understanding, when we value each other as equals, when we listen to each other, we care for each other, you got to be rooted in love. You got to be rooted in grace. You got to be rooted in, because if it's pride, if it's hatred, if it's misunderstandings, whatever that is, traditions that weren't good, but you've inherited them, whatever those are, we got to change what's deep, and then the fruit's going to come. So it carries over to a lot of different areas of life, but I really, in a fast-paced culture, I think it's good to slow down and really say, again, kind of what's my identity? What am I rooted in? What am I going to choose for that? Because that choice is going to affect everything.
Well, Jesse, I can tell you after this interview, after everything you shared today, there's going to be a lot of people who want to go grab that book, including me. So I'm asking for selfish reasons as well. Where can I go grab a copy of Rooted in Grace?
It was the self-publishing through lulu.com, but it's really pretty widely available now. I don't keep a penny from the book. It all goes to Compassion International to help kids. that are in poverty, that need clean water, clothes, and stuff. But yeah, if you're interested, it's an honor. I'm sending you a book, so that's free 99. That goes to you. But yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm not really an author. If I can write a book, anyone can write a book. And it's not going to wow you with literary excellence. It's just kind of, here's part of my story. And then, it's got faith stuff in there too. And I just wanted to walk people through some stuff that's helped me in terms of some of those deeper areas in life.
It's funny you say that. I have the same philosophy, and I felt like once I wrote my first book, working on the second one right now, I feel like, man, if I can write a book, anybody can. So I definitely feel the same way.
Yeah.
Is there any other advice you could give to aspiring authors aside from like you can do it? It's not as difficult as you may think, especially if you have the right guidance. Any other advice that comes to mind?
I would say just start the process. It can be daunting when you think of, a book, that sounds so massive. That's going to take months, this is simple advice, but I had to take Hebrew back in grad school, and it was during the summer in Dallas, Texas. It was 40 straight days over 100 degrees. And I'm thinking, what am I doing taking Hebrew in summer in humid Dallas, Texas? Like, you got to be kidding me. And my professor, she was awesome. And she said, the first day, ski the snow in front of you, meaning when you're going to go downhill skiing. And I remember 6th grade, first time I ever went, my friends knew how to ski. I had no idea. We got up to that top of the mountain, and I just looked down. I was like, who brought me up here? And is there any other way down? And they were like, you got to ski it. And they started to show me the snow plow. And the piece is ski the snow in front of you. And if you just keep, because I was like, okay, I can do a snowplow. I can do these next 5 feet, okay, I can turn and I can do the next 5 feet. And I just kept doing that. And pretty soon it's like, wow, I just skied down the whole mountain. And when you're writing a book, just do what's in front of you and do it out of joy. This helped me when I made that career change. It's like, what do I feel compelled to do? So where's that passion the strongest? Where is their joy? And also just a sense that this is bigger than me. This isn't something I can just pull off in my own strength, is what I felt like with this new career. But start writing out of that joy and out of that passion, and just start putting things on paper. Like, what do you want to share with the world? What part of your story? Everyone's story is significant. Don't compare it to everyone else. Just everyone's story is important. People tell me, oh, there's nothing to my story. My story's boring. I'm like, I don't believe that. I really don't believe that. So what is it about your story that's unique? Start writing that down. What's happened to you, what you feel passionate about, what you think is going to help people. Just start putting that down on paper, and don't worry about sorting it all out and editing it, and just let it just flow. And if it's flowing one day and you write for 2 hours, great. If it's not flowing the next 2 days and you only write for 5 minutes, great. Just keep going and putting it down on paper. And you're going to be surprised when you do that for a month. And then talk to Taj. He'll coach you. He'll give you the inside scoop, and he'll help you along. But when you start doing that, it's amazing what starts to come out. And then you've got something to work with too. But just get started.
Once again, more gems, more strong advice. Jesse, we could go on and on, man. I want to be respectful of your time. You've already shared so much with us, brought so much value. Before we wrap up, please tell people how they can reach out to you, how they can get in touch, how they can follow you on social media. I know we already talked about Clubhouse. Please tell everyone where else they can get in touch with you.
Thanks, Taj. If you go to the site, jessebradley.org, we just put that together. That's got some different resources. Everything on there is accessible. There's a marriage course because I mentioned my parents got divorced when I was 7. Out of that, I believe out of your pain, a lot of times comes your greatest passions. And so what have you gone through that's so difficult? I believe that forged in that fiery trial is passion. And for me, I see, okay, half the marriages end up in divorce. I just want to do something to strengthen marriages. And so that's a free video course that has a couple of discussion questions each day. So whether you're engaged, married, newlyweds, or been married for a long time, thinking about marriage, wherever you fall on that. It doesn't mean your marriage is falling apart. It's just some different topics, and you can choose this video or that video. But those videos are there with questions. All that's on the site, jessebradley.org. And then you can go to my social media from there. Love to connect with people. Twitter, of course, Facebook, Instagram. Just gonna start TikTok. I wasn't gonna do it, but I gotta go there. I think dancing's not my thing, but I'm gonna bring some other content, and we got some funny videos. So TikTok, hopefully before long. We got to keep learning, got to keep taking risks.
That's right. I love it, Jesse. And everyone listening, we will have all of that linked in the show notes. Jesse, from the bottom of my heart, man, thank you for coming on and sharing. So glad we connected. I knew after that conversation we had a couple weeks ago, this is going to be a lifelong friendship, partnership. And awesome. I know that even more so after this conversation today. So thank you for your time. Really grateful that you came on and shared with us.
Taj, just want to encourage you again. The journey and what you're bringing is so good. Your heart is golden, and you connect with people so well, and you're sincere and you care. And man, I'm excited to just keep walking with you.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate that, man. Well, everyone, before Jesse starts making me emotional with all these words of encouragement over here, I want to wrap it up. This has been another great episode of Author Spotlight with Jesse Bradley. If you tuned in on Thrive After Sports, thank you for tuning in there. Please go get in touch with this man. Follow this journey. As you can tell, it's definitely going to be worth it. Thank you again for your time, Jesse. We'll talk soon.
Great. Thanks, Taj.